And instead, we've got a guy who can't even find his way off a stage, allowing this to continue on. If he cares one iota about America, he would get on the phone with Donald Trump and ask him to come in right now and help negotiate peace. I think it can happen. I trust that President Trump can make that happen, but I don't trust that Joe Biden loves this country enough to make that happen. Piers, America is bearing the brunt of the funding of this. And I don't see Europe clamoring to throw their treasure in.
Britain has actually given more than any other European country. But I take your point. I do think
not more than America.
Well, I do. No, of course. And I do think America always has to get the lion's share.
This one, we're going to have a look at Kari Lake responding to Geraldo Rivera, and then getting into a rather heated debate with Piers Morgan. Let me inform you that it is Piers Morgan's opinion that America, the American taxpayers, should be fitting the bill, sparing no expense to make sure that Ukraine wins this war. Although many people, most people, don't even know what the end of the war should even look like. But before we get into the video, I was looking through my analytics the other day, and I realized that about 90% of the people that watch my videos aren't subscribed to the channel. So maybe today you would take the opportunity to hit that subscribe button. Now let's get into the debate.
Let me come back to what Geraldo said about the wars. Two big wars have been raging now. One for 2 years, one for a year. Ukraine and Russia and Israel, Hamas. You know, Trump, I said to someone today, it's not beyond the realms of fantasy that Trump could end up solving both of these wars, given he's a natural deal maker, given that there's a will pretty much on every side now to try and get these things resolved, and that he could end up with the Nobel Peace Prize. Am I mad?
I would love to see it. I would appreciate it more than I can say, that our children's children will not be going to war, that World War III won't be visited upon us. These are two intractable problems that I don't know how in the world they are solved. Does Ukraine give up half of its territory? Do the Israelis trust that Hamas will yield the hostages that have been underground for a year? I think that these are very, very difficult. It's easy to be glib about things, social issues, cultural issues. But when it's life and death, and now with the launch of the intercontinental ballistic missile, of course, didn't go intercontinentally, but it was ballistic missile. It was gravity driven, and it impacted 400 miles away. And I understand that yesterday's news was that the red phone was employed by Russia to counsel our defense department that they were not launching an ICBM strike on the United States. I mean, that's bone chilling to me.
It is, but I still think
infuriated by
it is bone chilling. But that's exactly what Putin wants us all to feel: bone chilled. And he's been rattling the nuclear weapons card against us now for 2.5 years. And you know what? Every time a red line's been crossed, he doesn't actually use them. I think he's full of shit.
Before Kari Lake responds, I just got to say, I've heard that multiple times out of people that every time a red line is crossed, Putin doesn't actually hit the nuke button. And Piers Morgan even went ahead there and said that he's full of shit. Well, I think that's Putin actually practicing restraint. That's not him being full of shit. And it's not a good look. It's not a good thing to say, well, he hasn't done it before, so we're going to cross the red line again and just keep testing and testing and testing, when the ultimate result will be nuclear fallout, right? Nuclear war. Just keep pushing the red line, crossing the red line until, finally he does push the button. And then we all know what happens once it gets to that point. And so let's not go there, but let's hear what Kari Lake has to say.
Can you even imagine if this were happening on Donald Trump's watch? And we were being marched straight into World War III, and he was meandering through a Brazilian rainforest, and J.D. Vance was on vacation in Hawaii.
No, I don't disagree with that. I think that is a very valid point. No, I think that's a very valid point. But I do think, I would say to you, Kari, though, I would say what I said to a lot of Republicans is, if you go back 30 years, the idea that any Republicans would be remotely interested in saying that America shouldn't help a sovereign democratic European country repel an invading Russian dictator would have been unthinkable. And yet here we are. Here we are. You've all done a complete volte-face.
$250 billion of our treasure to this country to help. The war was lost when they lost the spring offensive. We should have gone to the negotiating table and brought in our best negotiators to bring peace. This is not a Democrat-Republican issue. This is about bringing peace to the world. And instead, we've got a guy who can't even find his way off a stage, allowing this to continue on. If he cares one iota about America, he would get on the phone with Donald Trump and ask him to come in right now and help negotiate peace. I think it can happen. I trust that President Trump can make that happen, but I don't trust that Joe Biden loves this country enough to make that happen.
Yeah, but I think we should also remember who the really bad guys here are, and it's Vladimir Putin and his Russian barbaric invaders, because they did what they did, and they didn't need to do that, and they did it. And I grew up in a big military family, and the idea that a Russian dictator could just invade European countries and help himself to their land would have been completely unthinkable that we would want to accept that.
But how are we trying to stop that? We're just pouring more money into the war instead of trying to stop it.
To which I would say, what price freedom and democracy?
Well, $260 billion, and now we're hearing that as much as half of that may have been laundered through Ukrainian officials, and some of it, much of it, coming back into Democrat politicians.
But what would you have said? All right, but Kari, what would you have said in 1939 when Hitler invaded Poland?
No, I'm talking about this war right now.
Well, I'm saying it's a similar thing. You got a total nutcase in charge of invading hordes, invading a sovereign European democratic country.
Piers, America is bearing the brunt of the funding of this, and I don't see Europe clamoring to throw their treasure in.
Britain has actually given more than any other European country. But I take your point. I do think
not more than America.
Well, I do. No, of course, and I do think America always has to get the lion's share. Brian, just quickly, these two wars. Trump says he can fix them. They're very complicated, both of them, in terms of not just what's happened in the last year or two, but also historically. The history of these conflicts. Do you think he can pull off peace?
I think that Donald Trump has shown through his own rhetoric and even his cabinet appointments, including somebody like Tulsi Gabbard as DNI, I think he's shown whose side he's on. I mean, the fact that Kari Lake can't even come forward and say that a warmongering totalitarian dictator seeking to take the territory of a sovereign country is bad and just waving her hands around about money, and that's more important than protecting the sovereignty of a free country, especially one, by the way, who is aligned with China, and they've got territorial ambitions as well, including Taiwan, and we have a vested interest in terms of our economy of having Taiwan be a free state. The fact that all of these people can't take a clear-eyed view of this because they're so aligned with, I don't know whether it's Putin and that axis of evil, whether it's just focusing on making the U.S. more like the illiberal state that Russia is. I'm not sure which one it is. I get why they see a lot of Putin in Donald Trump, and so they're putting on full display which side they're on. So do I think that they're going to seek peace for in deference to democracy in the world? No, I think that Donald Trump has already shown which side.
That's where liberals go wrong when they compare Putin to Trump. It's like with all that Nazi stuff. It was so.
Yeah.
But I didn't call him a Nazi.
It hurts me because I
didn't call him a Nazi. I said
no, you didn't.
There are authoritarian leanings between Putin and Trump. Geraldo,
second invade
he tried to subvert the election result. He tried to subvert a free and fair election, incited an insurrection on January 6th. Don't memory hold.
And he was impeached for it. He was impeached for it.
So Brian Tyler Cohen there at the end completely contradicted himself. He basically said that the United States should spare no expense as it relates to protecting Ukraine, trying to stop Putin, a totalitarian, right? But then he said, we also have other interests, like we need to help defend Taiwan from China. And it's like, well, what do you mean? So you're basically saying we spare no expense. We just, everybody just give all the money over to Ukraine to make sure that Putin doesn't win. And then as soon as that happens, as soon as we're broke, what are we going to do about Taiwan? The dude makes no sense. He shouldn't even be in the same room as Kari Lake. I get it, they're not in the same room, but he shouldn't be allowed to be in the same conversation as Kari Lake to address somebody of her stature versus his. Maybe that's just me that thinks that, but you saw it right there. Piers Morgan also said that it should be the United States' responsibility to stop Putin in Ukraine, when Piers Morgan is the one that lives in the country that borders Ukraine, right? Maybe not directly borders, but they're both over in Europe, right? And so, you know, it's half a world away from me. And as an America First individual, I believe we need to start reducing our spending and working towards how we can end this war at as little cost of death and money, period. If Putin is willing to sit down and have the negotiation, then you have it. Plain and simple. They want to act like he's this, you know, potential Hitler. And I don't think Hitler was ever willing to sit down and have peace negotiations ever at any point. And we already know that they were trying to have peace talks before a couple years ago, but it was a former prime minister of Europe somewhere over there that stepped in and basically put a halt to the whole thing. So, you know what? I don't like the comparisons. I think they're bullshit, and I think it's wasting our money. It's draining the United States economy, essentially, as we fund to the tune of nearly $300 billion of unaccountable money, especially when you consider that here in the United States, you can't do a $600 transaction on Venmo without having to worry about the IRS making sure that you're accountable for paying your taxes on it or whatever. The accountability is focused on the wrong people, the American people who are already overtaxed and spread way too thin. Meanwhile, rich people are getting rich over war, and I'm tired of the death. I'm tired of the wasted spending. I'm looking forward to Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy heading up Doge and reducing this government waste. I'm looking forward to Donald Trump getting in there and creating peace over there between those two countries and possibly in the Middle East as well. These next 40-ish days before he is inaugurated can't go fast enough. I'm sorry, I'll skip Christmas, I'll skip New Year's this year. Let's get to that date and so we can get on the right track. And if you guys are on board with that, make sure you hit that like button. Consider subscribing to the channel. It would really help me out. Also, share this video and come visit me Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time when I go live with the Jar Openers podcast. Also, we have a Discord. You can find that link down in the description. But if I don't see it in one of the lives, if I don't see it in the Discord, make sure you're on the lookout for the next video because you're not going to want to miss it.